And we are live. Welcome, Mystery and Thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I'm so excited to welcome tonight, for the very first time, Tod Goldberg, who's here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new book out today, Only Way Out. Tod, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Well, the big thing is I can't believe I haven't been on here before. I don't know why you've excluded me all these years.
Lee made me do it. Your brother Lee made me do it.
I think this is the problem. I think people think they've had me on because they've had my older, not as good-looking brother on. As the better-looking younger one, it's a weight I have to carry.
Yeah, the younger one always thinks they're better looking.
Well, that's why I'm younger, so my skin is softer. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for watching today. So Only Way Out, it's my brand new book. It's my first standalone novel in, I think, 10 years. So I've spent I spent the better part of 15 years writing about the hitman rabbi, Sal Cupertine, the Rabbi David Cohen. Then I wrote a book with Brad Meltzer in 2016. So yeah, this is my first standalone novel since Brad and I wrote a book together. And it is about bad people doing bad things to worse people. The main plot point is a failed lawyer decides to heist a bunch of safe deposit boxes from his law firm, which he successfully does. This is no spoiler. He successfully steals them, and on his way to escaping off with his former child prodigy sister Penny, he crashes down a mountain ravine, decapitating him, as happens in my books, with a van full of loot. But he does it in the sight of a corrupt cop named Jack Biddle, who has big gambling debts and big problems, and who discovers the crashed van and the decapitated body and makes a series of very bad choices.
More than 8 nights of very bad choices, one might say.
Yes, yes.
Well, I have so many questions, and I can't wait to ask them, as well as get everyone to ask their questions. But first, I just want to welcome everyone, because we are broadcasting live to 8 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So, hey, mystery and thriller loving friends, no matter where you're watching from, you are in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder. We're going to make it a little less painful, get your week off to a killer start. If you've been here before, you know the drill. Every Monday, I give you my handpicked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask Tod about his creative process. Ask him about why Lee Goldberg has been forcing him off of the show for 5 long years. Ask him if he's ever broken his elbows. Anything that is weighing on your mind, get those questions going in the comments, and I'll get them right over to him. And I want to kick off. Hi, Renee, joining us from Facebook from Southeast Florida. Hey, Renee. Okay, Tod, so I have a lot of questions. First of all, decapitation. What's going on? Why are you obsessed with decapitation? Because I started counting the decapitations in this book, and I think I stopped at 5. And I was like, question number 1, why are you obsessed with decapitation?
It's a good point. It's a good question. And there's decapitation, and there's also just sort of limbs getting hacked off of
there's
things.
Limbs, and you don't see that. You only see one decapitation, but there are references to others.
Yeah, there's a few that are mentioned, and there's a few in previous books of mine too. You know what it does is it forces me to say, okay, no one is coming back from the dead in this book.
Okay.
There's no fake death in any of these things. No one jumped off a building and survived. And it's also, and this is going to sound crazy, but in terms of like the crazy ways to die that are fun in a macabre sort of way, there's nothing better than a human head bouncing around the back of a van. You don't want it to happen in real life, but in sort of a black comic noir, it sets up a lot of good jokes.
Okay, good. This is helpful. I'm starting to get a tiny glimpse into the mind of Tod Goldberg. Joanne is joining us from YouTube, saying hi from Las Vegas. We want our rabbi back. So let's start there. Where's the rabbi? When's he coming back?
Well, I think your next chance of seeing the rabbi is probably on something where the picture moves. That would be my biggest guess. I wrote those books I wrote the first short story featuring the Rabbi David Cohen in 2008. And then it appeared in the book Las Vegas Noir in 2009. And then I realized I was going to write novels about this character, but I also realized I was not smart enough and was not enough of a Jew to know all of the things that a rabbi would need to know. I spent another 2 years essentially reading all of the Jewish holy books to know what a fake rabbi would know, and a fake rabbi would know it. So I spent, the better part of 15 years writing about that one character and about his world.
Oh my God! And reading the rabbinical texts.
Yeah, I read the Talmud, the Midrash, all this Jewish eschatology. Over here, you can't quite see it, but there's a bunch of books on Judaism and faith, and it's my Jewish information and my organized crime information is right on top of each other.
But do you have the book Tough Jews? Because I do.
How dare you? I would grab it, but you'd see me reaching over there. Fantastic book.
So that's about, for those who don't know, the Tough Jews is about the history of Jewish organized crime and how Jewish organized crime and mobsters helped to mechanize and take it from a bunch of unorganized Irish thugs into first the organized Jewish mafia, and which later gave rise to the Italian mafia.
Yeah.
When
they basically franchised out to La Cosa Nostra.
Yeah, and Legs Diamond and all those good guys. Okay. So back to Joanne's question.
Yes.
The Rabbi David Cohen first appeared in 2008. You then spent the next 15 years reading rabbinical texts, educating yourself to be able to accurately portray Rabbi Cohen.
Yeah.
Keep going.
During those 15 years, I wrote 3 novels, 1 collection of stories, worked already on a previous adaptation of the books for Amazon right before the pandemic. So you know how that goes. And now I can't tell you where the books are now. I'd have to give back the money. But there's another network that owns it, and I think that's the most likely place. I loved writing that character, but I was ready to not have to worry about the Talmud while I wrote.
Well, this is good conversation as we are 14 days out from the start of Hanukkah. So excellent.
Yes. And I get, he wasn't so far away, because last year I did put out a book of Hanukkah noir. I gathered up a bunch of my friends and put out 8 Very Bad Nights. So the Rabbi Joanne might be floating around somewhere in my head.
Dreidel became deader.
Well, what's cool about that book, and Soho Press did a beautiful job designing it, is on the bottom of every page is a dreidel, and then if you flip through the book, it's a flip book, and the dreidel spins.
Oh my God, I didn't flip through it, and I love a flip book.
It is so cool. I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever.
Okay.
This makes the bathroom reading all the more engaging.
TMI. Renee wants to know, Todd, do you like being compared to your better looking brother? Oh, wait, she just said brother.
Do I like being compared to him? He's my brother. I love my brother. You know what is great? Lee and I don't have any competition with each other. Lee is 9 years older than me. And he had, by the time I was even thinking about becoming a professional author or writer for that matter, he had already published several books and was writing on television. He'd done a lot of great stuff. And he gave me extraordinary lessons to be a professional author. The biggest one that he imparted to me was, don't be an author, be a writer. And what that means in a practical sense is learn how to do more than one thing, because there's always going to be times, and this is important for you aspiring writers out there, there's always going to be times when what you're writing isn't selling for whatever reason, and you're going to want to have the ability to earn a living doing something. And so that has taught me to be a novelist and a story writer and an essayist and a critic and a journalist and a screenwriter. I'm not much of a poet because I couldn't handle the angst. But everything else I can do pretty well.
You're like, what rhymes with dreidel? This is very good advice. I was terrified for one brief moment that you were going to say, he gave me very good advice, which was not to be a writer, because he wanted to be a writer.
No, our whole family, it's either writers, lawyers, or people in the furniture business. So our
Well,
mother was a society columnist, and she wrote self-help books about divorce because she'd done it a lot. Our dad was a TV news journalist. My grandmother was a journalist. My uncle is a writer. My cousin is a writer. So it really is the family business. Even my two sisters have written books together on art and inspiration. So the notion that being a writer was somehow unattainable was never something that was ever discussed. Like, oh, you want to be a writer? Go be a writer.
Well, I think what's interesting is that I thought for instance I thought you were going to say Lee was going to be like, no, it's my stage, but that's I love knowing that, and I actually didn't know that your mom was a society column, and I think that's really great advice that he gave you.
It was fantastic advice.
Yeah.
You know what? I remember there was a turning point though, and I don't know if he was happy about this.
Saying, wow was right. Yeah, this is cool.
Well, is right. There was a turning point in my career where Lee started to be mentioned as my brother versus the other way around, and I think that bothered him.
Yeah. Also, yeah, exactly. And then there's also another Lee Goldberg, and he doesn't like
Lee Matthew. Yeah,
Lee Matthew, and so I will. Whenever I see Lee Matthew, I'll take a selfie and text it to Lee and say, "Oh, I'm with your twin." He doesn't like that, but I keep doing it.
Smart.
Oh my God. Yeah. I find that it's best to enrage him at all times. Margaret, welcome to the conversation. Joining us from Portland, Oregon, saying hi, Todd. Hi, Sara. Hi. And oh my God. Yes. Okay. Robin is joining us from snowy Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm trying to say Idaho with a French accent. It's not working. I could use some snow right now that we're past Thanksgiving. Okay, back to what you said, decapitation. It removes all possibility of the person coming back. Have you experienced people coming back from the dead? Renee wants to know.
The veil is thin.
We don't know. We need to know.
The veil is thin. Haven't you all had some sort of supernatural experience at some point in your life? Weird things have happened. I don't know that I have experienced people coming back from the dead, but I think they might come by every now and then to let you know that it's okay wherever they are.
How do they come by?
I think the first time anything sort of supernatural ever happened to me, I used to. This is a weird story. I warn you.
And we're all leaning in
somewhere. When I was a young man, I used to play with the Ouija board a lot. And I used to be able to do it.
Number one.
I know. Yeah, the veil's thin. And I could do it by myself. And I was like, well, if I'm doing it by myself, then I know no one's moving it because I'm not moving it. Why would I move it?
Right.
And, but I was asking, I would often, when I was younger, I would ask questions like, oh, does Jennifer Sedgwick think I'm cute? And I think then I might have moved it, because she never displayed any sort of amorous feelings towards my 13-year-old charms.
Yeah.
But then, this is a true story, I swear to God. A God I don't believe in, I swear to him. I got to the point where I was sort of making my own Ouija boards. And I was doing one at home. And I said, how do I know that you are real?
Yeah.
And it said phone. And as soon as it spelled out phone, my phone rang. And I was like, and it picked up, no one there.
Oh my God.
And this was, you got to put this in context. This is 1985, so it's not like someone heard me and it was on the cell phone. We had one phone. So there was that. And that freaked me out. But not enough that a few years later, I was playing with a Ouija board again. And this is the scary, true, horrifying bit. It kept spelling out, call my wife, tell her that I love her. Call my wife, tell her that I love her. And so it gave me a number, and I was like, screw it. And I was at work, which had free long distance, because the number was a 213 number. And I was
wait, he gave you the number?
Yes, spelled out the number. So I call this number. I remember the person's name. It was David Lopez. And I called, and a woman answered the phone, and I said, "This is going to sound crazy, but I'm playing with the Ouija board, and it's telling me to call you and tell you that your husband loves you."
Oh,
And this
my
woman says,
God.
"I don't know who you are or who your friends are, but stop this. This is cruel. My husband is dead." And hung up on me.
Oh my God, Todd, this is crazy.
And that was the last time I touched that.
You should be touching it every day because clearly
No.
you've got a direct line.
I don't want. I would too often use it for sports betting. I can't do it.
Tod Goldberg, we're gonna hang out and do the Ouija board together. It's happening. Make me a Ouija board for Hanukkah and send it over here.
The veil is thin, Sarah. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my God. Okay. This is a crazy. All right. Okay. Well, hold on. In my Goldberg scorecard, we're going to give Todd 10 points for that. And Todd is now taking the lead. Lee is falling by the wayside. Oh my God. Everyone's thanks for all the hearts, you guys. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. This is crazy. I'm going to be processing that and get back to it. Meanwhile, I want to talk about an only way out. Okay, so I noticed when you were talking about your family, you said your sister, we're talking about family of writers, lawyers, and furniture makers. I noticed that you thanked your sister for the legal advice. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that. Were you using this to inform how to rob a law firm? Or which part was she helping with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I needed to know sort of the legal ramifications of everything that was happening, like the legal ramifications of what people are putting in safe deposit boxes, the legal ramifications for disclosing it, what's covered by attorney-client privilege, what's covered by the Crime Fraud Prevention Act that lawyers have to adhere to. Also, she's my sister, and so her other big job is make sure I don't get sued by anybody or threaten lawsuits for other people for me. So, she's often helpful in those ways as well. But she and her son, my nephew, really were important resources for some legal advice because it was her son, in fact, who told me about law firms with safe deposit boxes. I had gone to I had stayed the night at my sister's house. We went to see a concert together. This is important. Take your sisters to concerts.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in going to concerts with your sisters because you get to see them as kids again. They start screaming, and it's very rare that you get to see your old aged sisters.
Your nephew a bottle of, was it bourbon?
Scotch. Yeah.
Scotch. Okay. Next time is that different than bourbon?
Yes.
I feel yes. Okay. So you're at. I want to get to how we got.
Oh yeah. So
concert.
I'm talking to my nephew. I'm sorry.
Okay. The nephew and the sister, and you were at a concert.
Yes. And so after the concert, I see my nephew at my sister's house, and he was in law school at the time. He had summer associated a couple places, and so I was asking him about where he had been, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this law firm, it's a really old sort of blue blood, but also white collar and criminal thing. It's been around for like 110 years." He's like, "So it's it's a lot of stuff." And I was like, "Well, is there anything weird about it?"
Yeah, good.
And he's like, "No, well, there's an entire floor of safe deposit boxes." And I was like, What?
Yeah. I thought you made that up.
No.
Interesting.
And I said, "Tell me about this." And he said, "Well, safe deposit boxes in banks, the feds can get into the private safe deposit boxes. There was a big case in LA a few years ago where the FBI raided this private safe deposit box company because the cartels were using the safe deposit boxes as essentially drops. It's a secure facility. You could drop drugs or money or guns or whatever. People come in and take it, and only one person has access to it." And so the feds had raided this one, but they raided all the safe deposit boxes because there was some presumption that if you were using this facility, you probably had some implied criminal behavior, which of course not everyone did, but that's why it went to the Supreme Court. So he told me about how these law firms have safe deposit boxes that are covered under attorney-client privilege. And I was like, "You just made me $1 million."
And you're just going to buy him a bottle of scotch? Sounds like more is owed, Mr. Goldberg.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, Sarah. Like, if I sell the film rights, I'll hook him up. You know what I'm saying?
Put that kid to work. Oh my gosh. Okay. So then, So you have this conversation with your nephew.
Mm-hmm.
You learn that law firms have safe deposit boxes, which I thought you had made up. You recognize it immediately as a golden idea, and then you're like, I'm going to write a story about a corrupt cop, a corrupt lawyer who's flunked the bar 10 times, open
15,
with him
15.
15, open with him getting the news that he's flunked at the 15th time, and then he and his sister are going to rob the boxes. How did you get from, oh, law firms have safe deposit boxes to this? And then I want to know, like, the moment of inception, and then a daily, if we're all flies on the wall of your writing den, what are we seeing every day? You tell us about your writing process, but first tell us how you got the idea to get there.
So he tells me this story, and it's almost immediate. Like, oh, well, the heist is the guy who's in charge of the safe deposit boxes. Whoever the paralegal is that's in charge of that floor, who has the key and is inventorying the boxes, well, obviously, in my world, he would steal everything. And it wouldn't even be something where he'd have to actually do some sort of elaborate heist. He has a key. So he would just take everything. And so like that almost immediately percolated into my mind, like, whoa, hey, there's something there. And then I was like, but that's not enough for a story of mine. He's got to succeed in this and then fail.
Spectacularly.
Fail spectacularly. How can I do that? And so within, probably, and I'm not even joking, within like 2 hours of me getting into my car, leaving my sister's house, driving from LA back to Palm Springs where I live, like it just all started to run into my mind. Like, oh, he gets away with the money and he crashes, but he crashes in front of someone who also needs money. Well, who's that guy? Oh, it's the local cop who's corrupt. And, sometimes I think when you're criminal minded like us, these connections start to sort of naturally need themselves together. I mean, a similar thing had happened to me when I was writing the gangster books, which is, the central premise of this is a hitman who hides out as a rabbi in Las Vegas, and he's laundering bodies through a cemetery. And the way I came up with that is I was parked in front of a Native American cemetery in Palm Springs, and I saw someone walk out, and I was like, I've never seen anyone walk out of there. And then I was like, I wonder who's in there. And then I had the thought, like, well, God, if I wanted to get away with murder, I'd bury someone in that cemetery. And then it was like, oh. So sometimes the muse shows up, and does cool stuff for you. So like this notion of, the accident that happens and the stealing of the money, that all came very, very quickly to me.
Okay.
What took more time was what was going to happen next, which is, there's this sister who's this former child prodigy, because I'm fascinated by child prodigies. They never turn out.
The IQ of 216 who goes to MIT.
Yeah, at 15 years old. She goes to MIT at 15 years old. And so I wanted to really write about the two smartest people to come out of a dying resort town. This child prodigy and her Harvard-educated older brother, both of whom are sort of beautiful losers.
Oh.
And that took a while to show up for me, a couple weeks. But once I sort of knew what that was, the story arrived pretty quickly, almost fully formed in my head. But what I'll tell you is the writing process for this was different than all my previous writing processes.
Because you wrote this not in your office. Because
I did not write this in my office. My lovely wife, who this story has a happy ending, so don't anyone get sad. Right when I started to write this book, my wife got diagnosed with breast cancer, which was a long and terrible year of her life. And the wonderful benefit of the job that I have is I got to be there for it and be there every day for it. And I was taking my computer and sitting in waiting rooms in hospitals. First my wife had the surgery, and then she had the chemotherapy, and then she had the radiation every day for, months. And so every day I was in there with that computer writing in those waiting rooms. And and then, you know, just sort of sitting in our bedroom while she slept and writing on the little sofa in our bedroom. So it was a different sort of experience for me. But it also ended up being inspiring in two specific ways. The first and most obvious way is that I was trying to escape from my own life when I was in those places. And to be able to give myself a life I could control on the page, where I'm in charge. I make the rules, and people that deserve to be sick get sick. People that don't deserve to be sick don't get sick. And I got to be in charge of all of that. And I got to imagine a world where chaos gets righted in the end. And deal with my anxiety and fear and all of that stuff through Black comedy, you know. So that was one side of it. The other side is, you know, sitting in these waiting rooms at Eisenhower Medical Center in Rancho Mirage, which is a beautiful hospital and where my lovely wife got amazing care. Every single waiting room had a shelf of books in it. Every single one of them. And it was really a lesson to me in the value of what it is that we do.
Ooh.
You know, I would sit there and I'd see someone take one of the books off the shelf. And, you know, oftentimes it's like books by my friends. You know, I can't tell you how many times I saw people taking a Sean Cosby book off of a shelf and reading it. And me thinking like, oh, he's very nice. You should. But it was often. But they would take that book off the shelf and they would read it for 15 minutes until they got called into their appointment or until the person they were picking up was ready to go, and they'd put that book back on the shelf. And it just reminded me, like, right, that, you know, what we do is a time machine. You know, we can make people escape from reality for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, however long it might be. And our job as writers and artists, it's to entertain, but it's also to transport and to practice a little empathy by showing people that other people's lives lack the logic and order of yours as well. You know, that all of us are going through it at one time. So it was a really different process. The process where it became normal again was after my wife got out of radiation, which was on Halloween of 2024. My book was due, I think, December 5th. And I think I wrote an additional 40,000 words between November 1st and December 5th. You know, rewrite new stuff.
That? Oh, okay.
Because I was unbridled, you know. It was like, oh, I'm ready to go. She's going to be fine. She's going to be great. I can go do this thing. And, you know, it really just goes to show that as writers, we often put up our own roadblocks, you know. And so now I tell my students, like, hey, I don't want to hear you can't make your deadline. I wrote this book in the cancer center at the Lucy Kersey Center in Rancho Mirage. You can surely go home on a Friday night and write.
Oh, Todd, I love that. Because I also noticed that you thanked the wonderful staff at that hospital.
I did, yeah.
For taking such good care of your wife, which I thought was really lovely. And then you also said, you acknowledged that not everyone is lucky enough to access care like that. And you said, we must do more to assure that everyone the level of care that my wife was lucky to receive. And I thought that was really lovely too. Not just to honor this wonderful staff who cared for your wife and brought her back to you and your family, but also to acknowledge that not everyone has that in this country. I'm very lucky. You know, the wonderful thing about my life is I have two jobs that I love. I'm a professional writer and I am a professor at the University of California. And being a professor at the University of California has given me the most amazing health care I could ever ask for. But it shouldn't be predicated on the job that I have. You know, I shouldn't get more because of where I work. You know, it's silly. It's exactly right. Robin, welcome, saying, I am going to remember to lock my generic white van so no one tosses body parts inside, but they might have trouble finding any room. Ooh. Robin, you're in the right place. That's sending a chill down my spine. I'm going to look out for you, lady. I love that because actually a van plays a very important part in Tod's book. Tod, this is a multi-point of view book. We have Robert, the brother. We have Penny, the sister. We have Jack Biddle, the crooked cop. And then we see these people through their own eyes and through the eyes of the other. We see what Penny thinks of herself, and we see what Jack thinks of her, and what and Nathan. And we have Nathan Diamond. We see what Nathan thinks of her. We see, I really like Mitch that. Mitch. Yeah. One thing that I think about is, so first of all, I wanted to ask, which of these characters do you feel was easier for you to write? Did you pull? Do each of them have parts of Tod Goldberg? Do we have a foot of Tod Goldberg in one? Do we have a body part? Do we have a brain in another? Or are you none of these people? Were some harder for you to write? Tell us about these different characters.
Well, I'm a little bit of all of them because it turns out I created all of them.
So, that was you? Okay.
Yeah. So each of them, has some aspect of me. I had mentioned before my mom was the society columnist for a local newspaper. And she was a character for sure. But she was also wildly vainglorious. And living in a small town, I lived in Palm Springs, and my mom was a society columnist in the city of Palm Springs, which at the time was sort of a dying resort town. It's been revitalized in the last 25 years or whatever. But when she was the society columnist, she was the most powerful person in the city of Palm Springs. She could make or break a restaurant or a career with a bold type line in a column. And so I got to witness like the weird small town power of a person, and also the weird small town power of her friends. And so there's a lot of my mom in the Jack Biddle character, who is the chief of police in a small town, and who envisions, that they're going to rename mountains after him.
Biddle Mountain.
Yeah. City streets, and maybe he'll run for Congress, and then he'll run for president.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of my mom in that, but there's a little bit of me in that too. I'm not going to lie. The genetic core of us is mitigated only by strong spouses. So, if I wasn't married to Wendy, I might be just as bad. So there's a little bit of that. And also, I love a king of a small space. Ooh. And that's really what a character like Jack Biddle is he is the master of his tiny domain. So there's a little bit of that. So writing him was an enormous amount of fun because I got to just, have him be a wild card who has terrible ideas that he thinks are great. And to have him be just a magnificent dope. And I love to write characters like that.
But he was enraging too.
He's also enraging.
Yeah. I wanted to be like, wake up, you deluded doofus. You are
he's a moron.
You're the bad guy, man.
Yes, he's the bad guy, but he thinks he's the good guy, which is I think sort of a hallmark of the kinds of stuff that I write. Is like my good guys often think that they're Superman, and my good guys often end up being Lex Luthor. But I love delusion in a character. So he was fun to write. For me, the hardest character to write was Penny. This genius with great expectations that she has shot herself in the foot to avoid, essentially. Because she has a more emotional core in the novel than any other character does. She's the person who's missing something profound, which is her brother, who she thinks may have double-crossed her. And I think that ends up being sort of a larger emotional thread through the book that might end up surprising people when, as you get further along, when you see what that sadness in her has eventually resulted in. So she was the hardest for me to write. And then I can write characters like Mitch Diamond for the rest of my life, every day. A fast talking.
Because we never really learn who he is, do we?
No.
I want to know. I think he might be Tod Goldberg. I don't know.
Well, I don't think so. I mean,
We don't know because we don't know.
I do describe him as looking like Chris Christopherson. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty easy comp, you know.
Exactly. Here we are. We're comping. Robin wants to know which university you teach at. Is it UC Santa Cruz?
No, UC Riverside.
UC Riverside. Okay, perfect.
Home of the Highlander. There can only be one.
The Highlander. Okay, perfect. Okay, so guys, I want to remind you that the book came out today, and you can order from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book, and immerse yourselves in the world of Penny, Robert, Jack Biddle, and Mitch Diamond. So whether you're watching with us in Facebook or YouTube, I'm going to pop the link up where you too can get your mitts on Only Way Out. And then I want to know which character you resonated the most with. We now know that Penny was the hardest for Tod to write. Mitch Diamond was the easiest for him to write. And Jack Biddle is based on himself and his mom, which I did not have on my bingo card tonight. Okay, I did not see that coming. So yep. I resonated the most with Penny. I don't know if that's because I'm a female reader, or because she was the most emotionally vulnerable and raw and sort of available of these hardened men. But guys, we're going to continue the conversation in in Mystery and Thriller Mavis, because I want to know which character everyone else resonated with after you order the book and read it, and let us know. Now, Tod, okay, so when you're not waiting in hospital waiting rooms, where is this the space? Oh, sorry, Robin had a question. She said, that is a beautiful bookshelf you have. Can you share a meaningful treasure on it? What is a meaningful treasure? And she said, I think,
let's see here.
Yeah, that was such a lovely question.
I can. This.
Ooh, it's a rock.
Is a rock. And it is a rock from a cemetery in Walla Walla, Washington, where both of my grandparents and my mom are buried.
Which Walla Walla was also in the book, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And I've never been to Walla Walla.
So Walla Walla is the ancestral home of our family. It's where our family escaped to from Russia in 1919, is Walla Walla, Washington. And so you'll often see in my books and also in my brother's books that, for reasons we're not quite sure, consciously or subconsciously, Walla Walla gets mentioned, I think, in every single book we've ever written.
Now it's a brotherly challenge.
Well, we did have a challenge that we also engaged our friend Fief Sutton with, which is the three of us were in Green Bay, Wisconsin for a conference together. And we walked by a bar that has since closed called Pour Decisions, Pour. And I was like, that is the greatest name of a bar I have ever seen.
That's good.
And so I was like, we should all use Poor Decisions. And so I used Poor Decisions both in my book, The Low Desert, and then also in my book, Gangsters Don't Die. Poor Decisions shows up. It shows up in one of my brother's books. I can't remember which one. And I think Fief Sutton put it in an episode of, what's that? What was his show? He had a show on Hallmark about two lawyers. I can't remember the title of it, but we all ended up using Poor Decisions in something. So if you're thinking you're freaking out and noticing similarities in people's work, it's just drunken conversations at conferences.
That is hilarious and very good to know, because I also was noticing that in the acknowledgments you thanked Juliet Graves, and I was like, my friend Juliet, who was on for The Lost Boys of Santa Quionia when her book came out earlier. And I was also looking for how those things, and Gabino Iglesias, and then one of the characters in the book was named Gabino, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start looking. Now I'm going to look for an Ivy, a Juliet, a Stephen Concoli. I'm going to just go through all the acknowledgments, and I'm going to play match a name, because there's a lot. I think there's a lot there. Oh, Robin says, thank you for sharing your treasure with us. Yes.
You're welcome.
You went and placed that stone on your on your grandparents' grave, and then you took it home, or you just took the stone?
No, I just took it from there. You always just leave one, but I thought I'd take one too because I don't get to get up to Walla Walla very often, so I wanted a little piece.
Oh, I love that. You guys, Todd's books have earned so much praise, including from Stephen, is it Concoli or Concoli?
Yeah.
Concoli? Okay, Concoli, who says this is an unapologetic, gripping view into criminal schemes gone bad, bad lives gone even worse, and sad lives redeemed. No beat is skipped. He got there. I put all of the reviews here in the comments so that you can peruse them at your own. We also have some from Ivy Pochoda, who just won a Thriller of the Year award. We have Stephen Graham Jones, who says small time crime, big time stakes, and the twists and turns aren't only in the plot. Stephen Graham, I just read that one. And we have Publishers Weekly saying, with comic flair, shocking violence, and a capacity for surprise, this recalls the noir tinged films of the Coen brothers, which was kind of funny because you wrote Rabbi Cohen.
Yeah, I did.
Kirkus awarded you a starred review, which I think was particularly impressive because I believe the New York Times called them reliably cantankerous, but they're not cantankerous in this review. They say Goldberg does an uncanny job of keeping multiple plot elements in the air, shifting among unholy alliances of mobsters and do-gooders turned bad with cutting humor. And the reason I want to talk about this one is because this is a complicated plot. Not just because of the timelines, because we actually span 15 years, and the characters, but also how they're all interwoven in this very small town way. So do you plot that out on little Post-it notes? Do you have an Excel spreadsheet? Are you drawing a giant murder board? What's going on over there, Tod Goldberg?
Hold on, let's see here.
That's your outline. This is it.
So when I'm working, I take a lot of notes and I write stuff down. So these are notes for another project I'm working on right now, a TV project I've been working on. But this is how I do it. Like, I have notes. This is a drawer at my desk, and then I shove them in here. And so the interesting thing though is they're sticky. These are sticky lined paper notes. So then let me just shove that back in there.
Sara, how do you manage this complicated plot? Todd grabs mangled wad of Post-it notes.
I've got a good brain for keeping this stuff, which is good. But I'm constantly writing notes.
Okay.
And I sometimes refer back to them. The thing that I think has always been helpful to me is if I write it down, I remember it.
Me too.
And so I don't even need to really go back to it. It's just the act of doing it seals the deal. And it was the same when I was in school. I could take notes. I'd never go back, but I remember from having actually taken the notes.
I think the next book should include a reference to Walla Walla and references to Flipper, Monk, and sharing a bottle of scotch with your nephew, although Renee suggests that you should buy him a car. Todd, we're going to send this clip to the nephew. Todd, as both a New York Times bestselling author and as a writing professor, what are 3 pieces of advice that you give to writers who are just starting out?
That's a good question. And it typically costs about $65,000 to get the answer, but I will give it to you for free.
That's what we like.
And you'll get an honorary MFA from it. How about that?
Oh my God, I'm really excited.
The first thing is actually the advice that my brother gave me, which is don't be an author, be a writer. And the graduate school that I created, in fact, at UC Riverside is sort of created with that idea in mind. So every single person in my program has a major, but they also have to work in a secondary form, because I don't want you to go into your career without knowing how to do more than one thing. And I'm a really big believer in having lots of avenues into your story or into the emotion that you want to talk about. A lot of times I'll have an emotion I want to explore, but it's not right for a book, And so I'll write some 5,000 word, extraordinarily sad essay that will appear in a magazine, and people will send me letters for the rest of my life saying that they empathize with me. That happens sometimes. Okay. So having that ability, though, to process the things you want to process dramatically, emotionally, whatever it might be, it's not always going to be in the mode you choose initially. You might have to search for it. So number one, be a writer, not an author, or be a writer, not a screenwriter, be a writer, not a poet, be a writer, not a playwright. Have the ability to do several things. The second thing is actually a piece of advice that I got from Donald Westlake, the amazing crime writer Donald Westlake, who was an absolute hero of mine. He gave me this advice when he was still alive. That was helpful. I didn't have to go through the Ouija board. I want to say it was almost 20 years ago at this point. I think he died in 2008, so this was probably 2006 or so. I had done an event with him at the LA Times Festival of Books, and where I interviewed him, and he was great. And for inexplicable reasons, he took a shine to me, and which was so amazing. Like, you rarely want to meet your heroes; they'll disappoint you.
Oh God!
But he was absolutely not a disappointment. Absolutely, and that goes to another hero. Speaking of which, is that Daniel Woodrell, who passed away just a couple days ago. Absolute hero, and another hero who didn't disappoint me. He was kind to me when he didn't need to be. It was, that's always a mark of a real mensch. But anyway, back to Wesley. We spent this whole day together walking around this book festival, talking. And then later that night, in fact, we hooked up with my brother, and we spent the rest of the night talking about Hollywood stuff and screenplays. And it was like a lesson in the history of noir, which was so cool.
Did Lee monopolize the conversation? It
was amazing. Lee actually managed to be quiet for the first time in his life. So Donald Westlake and I were walking around this book festival, and I was like, I'm having a real problem in my career right now. I don't feel like I know how to end books well. I don't feel like I know how to end stories. I'd just written a book I couldn't sell, and I was really sort of in a low place creatively. And I said, how do you know when a story is over, when a scene is over? And he told me a piece of advice I've imparted to a lot of my students over the years that is simple and profound. He said, I know that I'm done when the reader could write the next page.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, right. Like, when you've solved all the problems, or when the next thing that you could possibly write is something that the reader could predict, it's over. Your scene's over. Your dialogue's over. Whatever. You can apply it on a macro level or a micro level, and it really works. And that was a life-changing, simple piece of advice that he gave me. And I try to impart that to my students on a regular basis. The last thing that I'll tell you actually is a piece of advice that I got from the wonderful author Gary Phillips. Do you know Gary Phillips, Sarah?
I don't.
Gary Phillips is a fantastic crime writer. He's a giant man. He's about 6'5". He used to be really big. He's lost a lot of weight, but at the time he was about 300 pounds, I'd guess. He's a big, imposing figure. And he had asked me to submit a story for one of those Akashic Books noir anthologies. It was Orange County Noir. And so I had given him a short story, and he emails me and says, hey, I want to talk to you about your story, go over some edits. And I was like, oh, okay. So we're on the phone. This is like 2008 or something like that. And he's like, okay, page 5. Do something badass on page 5. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like,
yeah,
okay.
You're like, hold on.
All right. He's like, page 9. Why don't you do something hardcore on page 9? I was like, okay. Yeah, okay. I see it. He's like, okay, moving on. Page 17. Does your character have a catchphrase? And I was like, not really a catchphrase guy, Gary. He said, okay. Well, then I do something badass again here on page 17. And I said, okay, anything else? And he's like, nope. I said, all right, just to confirm, something badass on page 5, something hardcore on page 9, and something badass on page 17.
Okay.
And he said, yeah. I was like, all right, cool. I'm on it.
Hold on, I'm going to go through. Let me see what happens on page 5. We're gonna put this to the test.
It's a good test, right? Yeah, apply it to every book.
Actually, something badass does happen on page 5. Okay, let's see what happens. We're gonna put this to the test. We're gonna send a report card.
I got a copy here too. Let's see. Hold on.
Let's do it. Okay.
Hold
on. We're talking about $200,000 on page 9.
7.
That is pretty hardcore. Yep.
Oh, here I'll read some hardcore.
Let's hear the hardcore.
Jack did 2 tours in Iraq. First during Desert Storm. He'd enlisted in the army after high school, like a dumb fuck. And then he'd re-upped right after 9/11. Found himself fighting house to house in Fallujah and got to sort of liking it. So killing wasn't so hard for him. It was part of the game. Hell, he ended up getting popped by a 9-year-old with a 22, which got him sent home with a Purple Heart. Yeah, right there.
Okay, so we have Gary Phillips to thank for this incredible advice. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that, Professor Goldberg. This is illuminating.
$65,000 to get that normally.
See, oh my God, see, and we got it here just for being part of this Mavens community here with Murder by the Book. You get it for free, which reminds me, it is time to order Tod's book from our favorite woman-owned book right now. So whether you're watching from our favorite woman-owned bookstore right now, so whether you are watching with us on Facebook or YouTube, I'm going to pop the link up again so that you can get your mitts on Only Way Out and see what you think of the badassery on page 5, the hardcore on page 9, and the badassery on page 17. Tod Goldberg, it has been a pleasure hosting you. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, Renee, we all get MFAs. And we all get MFAs. And this one, it's Mavens in Fine Arts.
You'll be getting a fundraising letter from me in the morning. Don't you worry.
Tod Goldberg, thank you so much for joining us and giving us the inside scoop on Only Way Out. Congratulations on your book making its way out into the world today. And Mavens, thank you for joining me and spending your Mystery Monday with us. I hope your week is off to a killer start, and may the days and the pages fly by. I will see you next Monday. Take very good care. Until then.